All right, Galatians 4, 12 through 20. We're going to be looking at the topic of free to serve for Christ in others. And the idea here is that we are serving so that Christ would be formed in others. You'll read the passage there, and hopefully that'll put everything together. The lesson objective to see how the gospel frees us from self-serving or selfish, slavish pursuits, so that we can serve for the formation of Christ in others. Now, in this passage, we see Paul's plea for the Galatian Christians. In verses 12 through 16, Paul is pleading with them to be like him. And then he even makes the statement there, am I now become your enemy? It seems as if the tension and the division between Paul and the Galatian Christians has become such that he uses this word enemy. And then we obviously see Paul's passion for the Galatian Christians. And you'll see in your lesson the zeal of these teachers, as well as the passion and the zeal of the Apostle Paul. The teachers were attempting to exclude the Galatian Christians from Christ and ultimately from Paul. So they were actually creating division and exclusion, which is evidence not of the gospel, but is evidence of another gospel. Paul's passion, on the flip side, his zeal, was that Christ would be formed in the Galatian believers, that ultimately they would not only be people who had in the past believed by grace through faith, but that they would continue believing in the sufficiency of Jesus, that Christ would be formed in them. And then, thirdly, the principal point is that the gospel frees Christians from self-serving pursuits. And so in this particular point, we drive and really talk about the principle in verses 12 through 20. So when the true gospel is believed by Christians, it frees them from self-serving pursuits and thus allows them to genuinely serve for the formation of Christ in the lives of believers they influence. And so it allows you to actually edify and build up and work for the formation of Christ in the lives of others, rather than always doing things for selfish reasons and selfish motivations. And then the application point here, application is Christians today are free to selflessly serve others. Now, a couple of evidences that maybe we are not selflessly serving others, or we have been deceived by another gospel, is foolish wars that lead to division. So one of the evidences that shows we've been deceived by another gospel are the foolish wars we choose to have against those who are the means of the true gospel. And so when we have unwittingly, like the Galatian believers, been deceived by another gospel, we have started to place our identity in maybe a work, or find our affirmation, our self-actualization, our self-esteem, whatever you want to call it, when we start to find that in something we are doing, in some kind of self-righteousness, we might still be saying that we're saved by grace through faith, but our emotions, our beliefs, our thoughts, our behaviors, they tend to give a different evidence. One of the evidences that we have adopted this other gospel is the foolish wars that lead to division. We fight over nonsensical things. Then the other evidence is that we've been deceived by another gospel is an excessive zeal to be heeded, adored, or needed. And it's interesting, the words that the Apostle Paul uses in this particular passage, it shows that these false teachers needed to be needed. And so I hope that makes sense. They had a need to be needed. And so as a result, they were trying to gain a following behind themselves rather than gain a following for Christ. They were very man-centered. Their gospel was man-centered because it was based on works. It was another gospel, which is not really the true gospel at all. And they were in need of having followers. They were zealous to have people follow them. One of the different things I did in your lesson here is I've told you in the past to apply the principle. So if you remember the principle, it still should be on your screen there. The gospel frees Christians from self-serving pursuits. I've instructed you as teachers to apply that principle to the various ages and stages of your students. And so in your lesson, the questions that I answer, I went ahead and took time to write out applications for each of these. How does this principle apply to the parents of small children? How does the principle of being free to serve for the formation of Christ help parents who have small children? How does it apply to young people? How does it apply to retirees? How does it apply to employees? How does it apply to single Christian women? And so all of these covered in your lesson to try and give you a little guidance on how you apply the principle at every age and stage, depending on where you are and who you have in your hearing in your classroom. Hope this lesson will be something insightful and helpful for you, and be praying for you all as you teach it. God bless.